She was 8 months pregnant when her husband's mistress slapped her in court. What happened next exposed a murder, revealed her real father was the judge, and brought down a millionaire's empire. This is Sarah Mitchell's story, and by the end, you'll understand why 20 million people called it the slap heard around the world. But first, smash that subscribe button and bell icon, because stories like Sarah's deserve to be heard. Let's begin. The mahogany doors of the courthouse swung open with a groan that seemed to echo Sarah Mitchell's breaking heart. At 28 years old and 8 months pregnant, she moved with the careful grace of someone carrying precious cargo through a minefield. Her swollen belly stretched the fabric of her modest maternity dress, a stark contrast to the designer outfit she would have worn just 6 months ago, back when she still believed in fairy tales. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, one hand protectively cradling her stomach where her unborn son kicked restlessly. The baby always seemed to know when she was anxious, responding to her emotional state with movements that felt like tiny protests against the chaos of the outside world. The courthouse corridor stretched before her like a tunnel of judgment. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everyone look guilty of something. Sarah's footsteps echoed off the marble floors, each click of her modest heels a countdown to the confrontation she'd been dreading for weeks. She'd arrived early, hoping to center herself before the divorce settlement hearing. Her millionaire ex-husband Richard would be there. Of course, probably with his attorney James Bradley, a shark in a $3,000 suit who'd made a career of helping wealthy men hide assets from their wives. But Sarah had her own legal champion now, Rebecca Taylor, a fierce advocate who'd taken her case pro bono after hearing about the narcissistic abuse Sarah had endured. The waiting area outside courtroom 3 was nearly empty at this hour. Sarah lowered herself carefully onto a wooden bench, her back aching from the extra weight she carried. She closed her eyes and practiced the breathing exercises Dr. Patricia Holbrook had taught her in for 4 counts. Hold for 4, out for 4. Each breath was a small act of rebellion against the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. "You're not the naive girl who married him anymore," she reminded herself, feeling the baby shift position. "You're a mother now. You're strong." The transformation had been painful but necessary. 6 months ago, she discovered Richard's affair through a text message he'd carelessly left open on his tablet. Madison Cole, or Madison Williams, as Sarah had recently learned, was her real name wasn't just another woman. She was a predator who targeted Richard specifically because of his wealth, and Richard had fallen for it completely. Or perhaps he'd simply been looking for an excuse to discard his young wife, like last season's fashion. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "On my way. Remember, you don't have to speak to them before the hearing. Stay strong." The attorney's words were meant to comfort, but they also reminded Sarah of what was coming. This wasn't just about dividing assets or determining custody arrangements for their unborn child. This was about reclaiming her life from a man who'd systematically destroyed her self-worth over 3 years of marriage. Young love, her mother Helen had called it before she passed away 2 years ago. Be careful, sweetheart. Men like Richard don't marry women like us for love. Sarah hadn't understood then. She'd been 25, fresh out of graduate school with a degree in social work that she'd never gotten to use. Richard had swept her off her feet with private jets and charity galas, making her feel like she'd stepped into a different world. A better world, she'd thought. How wrong she'd been. The elevator dinged, and Sarah's entire body tensed. Even before she looked up, she knew who it would be. There was a particular sound to Richard's walk, confident, measured steps that announced his importance to anyone within earshot. He emerged from the elevator in his signature navy suit, phone pressed to his ear, already conducting business as if this divorce was just another item on his schedule. Behind him, clicking along in designer heels that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, was Madison. She was everything Sarah wasn't: tall, sleek, with the kind of aggressive beauty that turned heads and broke hearts. At 35, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman who'd never heard the word no and wouldn't accept it if she did. Sarah instinctively placed both hands over her belly, as if she could shield her baby from the toxic energy that seemed to radiate from the approaching couple. Yes, couple. Richard hadn't even tried to hide it. His arm was around Madison's waist, and she leaned into him with the possessive air of a woman marking her territory. Well, well, Madison's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. Look who's here bright and early, trying to get sympathy points from the judge. Sarah, Richard didn't even look at his soon-to-be ex-wife. He continued his phone conversation as if she were invisible. Just another piece of furniture in the courthouse hallway. It was a practiced cruelty, this ability to make her feel like she didn't exist. Sarah didn't respond to Madison's taunt. Dr. Holbrook had taught her about Grey Rock technique, becoming as uninteresting as possible to avoid feeding the narcissistic supply. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the gentle movements of her baby. Oh, come on, Madison pressed, moving closer. Surely you have something to say, some pathetic plea about how Richard should think of his child. Newsflash, honey, he's already planning our family. Real children, not whatever mistake you're carrying. The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully calculated to wound. Sarah's hands trembled, but she didn't look up. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Madison, enough, Richard finally said, ending his call, but there was no real admonishment in his tone. If anything, he sounded amused. Save it for the courtroom. Why? Madison laughed, a tinkling sound that held no warmth. She needs to understand her place. Some little gold digger who thought she'd won the lottery. Well, sweetheart, lottery tickets expire. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress, and she rubbed soothing circles on her belly. That's enough. A new voice entered the conversation, strong, authoritative, and unexpectedly familiar. Sarah looked up to see a woman striding toward them with purpose. She was in her early 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a professional bun and eyes that blazed with righteous anger. She wore a sharp business suit and carried herself like someone used to being heard. And you are, Madison asked, her tone dripping with disdain. Emma Patterson, the woman replied, positioning herself between Sarah and her tormentors. Attorney, and you're about to be defendants in a harassment suit if you don't step back right now. Richard's eyes narrowed. Patterson, as in Judge Patterson. Emma smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The very same. Now, I believe my client has a right to wait for her hearing without being accosted. Your client, James Bradley, had arrived. Looking every inch the high-powered attorney he was, I wasn't aware Mrs. Mitchell had changed representation. I'm consulting, Emma said smoothly. And right now, I'm documenting what looks very much like intentional infliction of emotional distress on a pregnant woman. Would you like to continue? Ms. Cole, or should I say, Ms. Williams. Oh yes, we know all about your real name and your history. Madison's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. You don't scare me. I should, Emma replied. But please continue. Every word you say is just more evidence. The tension in the corridor was palpable. Richard finally seemed to realize the precarious position they were in. He took Madison's arm, steering her toward the other end of the hallway. Let's go. This isn't worth our time. As they walked away, Madison threw one last look over her shoulder, a promise that this wasn't over. Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe, looking up at the woman who'd appeared like a guardian angel. Thank you, she whispered. Emma's expression softened as she sat down beside Sarah. You don't need to thank me. We're family, after all. Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. I'm sorry, what? It's a long story, Emma said, glancing at the courtroom doors. One that involves your mother, Helen Parker, and a father neither of us knew we shared. But right now, we need to focus on getting you through this hearing. The revelation hit Sarah like a lightning bolt. We're sisters. Emma nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Half-sisters, I've been looking for you for months, ever since I discovered the truth. I'm sorry I'm only showing up now, when you need help. But I promise you, Sarah, you're not alone anymore. You have family, and we protect our own. Before Sarah could process this shocking revelation, Rebecca Taylor arrived, her heels clicking efficiently across the marble floor. Sarah, I'm here. Are you ready? But Sarah wasn't listening. She was staring at Emma, seeing for the first time the familiar shape of her nose, the way she tilted her head when thinking little things that suddenly made sense. The baby kicked again, and Sarah gasped. Are you okay? Both women asked simultaneously. I think I'm having a contraction, Sarah admitted, her hand going to her lower back where pain was starting to radiate. It's probably just Braxton Hicks, Rebecca said, though concern colored her voice. The stress of the day. We should get you some water. Emma was already moving, heading to the water fountain with a paper cup. As she did, the courtroom doors opened, and a bailiff stepped out. Mitchell versus Mitchell, Judge Patterson is ready for you? Sarah's eyes widened. Judge Patterson? But that would be... Our father, Emma finished quietly. He doesn't know you're his daughter. I haven't told him yet. I wanted to be sure you were okay with it first. The reality of the situation crashed over Sarah like a wave. She was about to face her millionaire ex-husband and his mistress in a divorce settlement hearing, presided over by a father she'd never known existed, while her newly discovered sister stood by her side, and her baby seemed determined to make his own dramatic entrance. I can't do this, Sarah whispered. Emma took her hand, squeezing gently. Yes, you can. You're stronger than you know. Mom would be so proud of you. You knew our mother, only through stories and letters. But I know she loved you fiercely, and I know she'd want you to fight for yourself and your baby. So that's what we're going to do. Rebecca looked between them, clearly sensing there was more to the story but professional enough not to pry. We need to go in. Sarah, are you ready? Sarah stood slowly, one hand on her belly, the other still clasped in Emma's. I'm ready. The courtroom was smaller than Sarah had expected, more intimate and therefore more intimidating. Dark wood paneling covered the walls, and morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The American flag stood in one corner, a silent witness to the justice about to be sought or denied. Judge William Patterson sat behind the bench, an imposing figure even in his black robes. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Sarah found herself searching his face for any resemblance, any hint of the connection Emma claimed they shared. Please be seated, Judge Patterson instructed, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades on the bench. We're here for the matter of Mitchell versus Mitchell, case number 4739. I see both parties are present with counsel. Richard and Madison sat at the plaintiff's table with James Bradley. Madison shouldn't have been there. She had no legal standing in the proceedings, but Richard's arrogance knew no bounds. He wanted Sarah to see them together, to rub salt in the wound. Sarah took her seat between Rebecca and Emma, her back aching with each movement. The baby had been restless all morning, and the Braxton Hicks contractions were coming more frequently. She forced herself to focus on Rebecca's opening statement. Your Honor, Rebecca began, standing with perfect posture. We're here today to address the equitable distribution of marital assets and to establish custody arrangements for the child Mrs. Mitchell is carrying. My client has been subjected to narcissistic abuse throughout her marriage, including financial control, emotional manipulation, and infidelity. James Bradley stood before Rebecca could continue. Objection, Your Honor. These are unsubstantiated allegations meant to prejudice the court. Mr. Bradley, Judge Patterson said evenly, this is a hearing, not a trial. I'll allow Miss Taylor to present her case. You'll have your opportunity to respond. Rebecca nodded gratefully and continued. My client discovered her husband's affair 6 months ago. Since then, She has been systematically cut off from marital funds, forced to rely on the charity of friends, and subjected to a campaign of harassment designed to break her spirit and force her to accept an unconscionable settlement. That's ridiculous, Madison burst out, ignoring the sharp look from James Bradley. She's nothing but a gold digger who got pregnant to trap Richard. Judge Patterson's gavel came down hard. Ms. Cole, you are not a party to this case. If you cannot remain silent, you will be removed from my courtroom. Madison's face flushed with anger, but Richard placed a hand on her arm, and she subsided. Sarah noticed the calculating look in Madison's eyes and felt a chill run down her spine. This woman was dangerous, not just mean. Mr. Bradley, Judge Patterson said, please present your client's position. James Bradley stood, adjusting his tie with practiced ease. Your Honor, and my client, Richard Mitchell, has been more than generous. He's offered Mrs. Mitchell a settlement of $250,000, which is more than fair considering the length of the marriage and her limited contribution to the marital assets. Limited contribution? Rebecca's voice was sharp. Mrs. Mitchell gave up her career to support her husband's business endeavors. She hosted his events, managed his household, and provided the stable home life that allowed him to build his fortune. She was a housewife, Bradley countered dismissively. Hardly a challenging role. Emma's hand found Sarah's under the table, squeezing in silent support. Sarah felt another contraction, stronger this time, and had to bite her lip to keep from gasping. Judge Patterson reviewed the documents before him. I see here that Mr. Mitchell's net worth is estimated at $42 million. The proposed settlement represents less than 1% of that. Your Honor, Bradley said smoothly. Most of those assets were acquired before the marriage or through business ventures in which Mrs. Mitchell had no involvement. That's not entirely accurate, Rebecca interjected. She pulled out a folder of documents. We have evidence that several major deals were negotiated at social events organized and hosted by Mrs. Mitchell. Her social connections, particularly through her late mother's charity work, were instrumental in Mr. Mitchell's business expansion. Richard scoffed audibly. This is ridiculous. Sarah didn't do anything but spend my money and play house. Mr. Mitchell, Judge Patterson warned, you'll have your opportunity to testify if necessary. The hearing continued with both sides presenting financial documents and arguing over asset division. Sarah tried to focus, but the contractions were getting stronger and closer together. This wasn't Braxton Hicks. This was real labor, 3 weeks early. Your Honor, Rebecca was saying, we also need to address the issue of custody. Mr. Mitchell has indicated he wants full custody of the child. That's correct, Bradley confirmed. My client questions the paternity and believes Mrs. Mitchell is unfit to raise the child given her emotional instability. Emotional instability. Rebecca's voice rose. She's been abused for 3 years. Any emotional distress she's experiencing is a direct result of Mr. Mitchell's actions. These are serious allegations, Judge Patterson said, his eyes moving between the parties. Mr. Mitchell, are you truly questioning the paternity of this child? Richard stood, his expression cold. Your Honor, my wife was desperate to keep me. I wouldn't put it past her to have gotten pregnant by someone else to trap me in the marriage. Sarah gasped, both from the cruel words and from another contraction. Emma noticed her distress immediately. Your Honor, Emma said, standing. My client needs a brief recess. But Madison had noticed too, and something ugly flashed in her eyes. She stood abruptly, shaking off Richard's restraining hand. Oh, please, Madison said loudly. She's faking it for sympathy, just like she's been faking being a victim this whole time. Miss Cole, sit down, Judge Patterson ordered. But Madison was beyond listening. She stormed around the table toward Sarah, her face twisted with rage. You pathetic little nobody. You think you can take Richard's money? You think that baby will keep him tied to you? Everything happened in slow motion. Madison raised her hand, and before anyone could react, she slapped Sarah hard across the face. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Sarah fell backward, her hands instinctively going to protect her belly. Emma caught her before she hit the ground, but the damage was done. Sarah cried out in pain as a strong contraction seized her body, and she felt a warm gush of fluid. "My water!" Sarah gasped. "My water just broke!" The courtroom erupted in chaos. Judge Patterson was on his feet, shouting for security. Rebecca was calling 911. Emma cradled Sarah protectively, her face a mask of fury as she glared at Madison. "You assault a pregnant woman in front of a judge." Emma's voice was deadly quiet. "You just ended your own future." Madison seemed to realize what she'd done, her face draining of color. "I didn't mean..." "She provoked me." "Security, arrest Ms. Cole for assault," Judge Patterson ordered as two officers entered the courtroom. His face was thunderous, all judicial impartiality gone. "Mr. Mitchell, control your companion." But Richard just stood there, looking inconvenienced rather than concerned. "This is all very dramatic, but surely we can continue the hearing." "Continue," Emma whirled on him. "Your pregnant wife is in labor because your mistress assaulted her, and you want to continue." "She's my ex-wife," Richard corrected coldly. "Or she will be soon." Sarah moaned as another contraction hit. They were coming fast now. Too fast. "The baby," she panted. "Something's wrong. It's too early." Judge Patterson came down from the bench, and for a moment, his professional mask slipped. He looked at Sarah with an expression of deep concern, almost paternal. "The ambulance is on the way," he said gently. Then, to Emma, "Take care of her." "I'm not leaving her," Emma said firmly. As the EMTs arrived and began attending to Sarah, Madison was being handcuffed. "Richard, do something," she shrieked. Richard's response chilled everyone in the room. "You're on your own. Madison, I don't associate with criminals." Madison's face transformed from disbelief to rage. "You bastard, I did everything for you. I got rid of your second wife the same way. Remember, you promised me." "Shut up," Richard roared, but it was too late. Judge Patterson's voice cut through the chaos. "Detective Roberts, I believe we need to expand this investigation. Mr. Bradley, advise your client not to leave town." Detective Michelle Roberts, who'd been observing from the gallery, stepped forward. "Already on it, Your Honor." As the EMTs prepared to transport Sarah, she grabbed Emma's hand. "Don't leave me. Please, I'm scared." "I'm not going anywhere," Emma promised. "We're family. Remember." Judge Patterson watched the scene, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Patterson, accompany your client to the hospital. This hearing is postponed indefinitely, and Mr. Mitchell," he turned to Richard with barely concealed disgust, "you might want to hire a criminal attorney. You're going to need one." As Sarah was wheeled out, she heard Madison screaming from the hallway where she was being arrested. "This isn't over. You can't do this to me. I know things. I know everything." The last thing Sarah saw before the ambulance doors closed was Emma's fierce, protective face, and behind her, Judge Patterson standing in the courthouse entrance, his judicial robes billowing in the wind, watching them leave with an expression of profound sadness. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Sarah gripped the bed rails as another contraction tore through her body, her knuckles white with the effort of not screaming. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking her baby's heart rate, which the nurses kept checking with increasingly concerned expressions. "You're doing great," Emma said, dabbing Sarah's forehead with a cool cloth. She hadn't left Sarah's side since they'd arrived 2 hours ago. "Just breathe through it." "It's too early," Sarah panted. "He's not ready. I'm not ready." Dr. Patricia Holbrook had arrived shortly after them, not as Sarah's therapist, but as her support person. "Sarah, listen to me," she said in her calm, professional voice. "Your baby is 37 weeks. That's considered full term? He's ready, and so are you. Another contraction hit, and Sarah cried out. The pain was different from what she'd expected, not just physical, but emotional. Everything was happening too fast. The assault, the revelation about Emma, the labor. Her mind couldn't process it all. "Where's Rebecca?" Sarah asked between contractions. "She's handling things at the courthouse," Emma replied. "Madison's being formally charged, and there's a lot of paperwork. She said to tell you not to worry about anything except having this baby." A nurse came in to check Sarah's dilation. 7 centimeters, she announced. "You're progressing quickly. The doctor will be in soon." As the nurse left, Sarah grabbed Emma's hand. "Tell me about our father. Tell me about Judge Patterson." Emma hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do this now? I need something to focus on besides the pain. Please." Emma sat on the edge of the bed, still holding Sarah's hand. "Our mother, Helen, had a brief relationship with William Patterson before she married your father. She was young, working as a court reporter. He was a young attorney, brilliant and ambitious. They fell in love, but his family didn't approve. She wasn't from the right social class." Sarah listened, trying to picture her mother as a young woman in love. Helen had never spoken of any man before Sarah's father. "She left without telling him she was pregnant," Emma continued. "She moved to another state, had me, and raised me alone for 5 years. Then she met your father, David Parker. They married, and she had you. I think she wanted to give us both the family she never had." "But why didn't she tell me about you?" Sarah asked, then tensed as another contraction began. Emma helped her breathe through it before answering. "Your father didn't want me. He tolerated my presence but made it clear I wasn't his daughter. When they divorced, I was 12 and you were 7. The custody agreement gave me to our mother only part-time, and your father got primary custody of you. He didn't want us to have contact. That's why I barely remember you," Sarah whispered. "Mom would sometimes mention an older sister, but Dad said she was confused." "She wasn't confused. She was heartbroken. She wrote me letters about you constantly. How smart you were. How kind. She saved every picture, every report card. When she died, she left me a box full of memories of you." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, mixing with sweat. "And our father, Judge Patterson. I found out about him after Mom died. She left me a letter explaining everything. I reached out to him 6 months ago. He was shocked but accepted me immediately. He's been trying to make up for lost time." "Does he know about me?" Emma shook her head. "I wanted to tell him, but then I found out about your situation with Richard. I thought you had enough to deal with. I was planning to tell you both after the divorce was finalized." The door opened and a doctor entered. But it wasn't the obstetrician Sarah expected. It was an older man with kind eyes and gentle hands. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Anderson. Dr. Kumar is in emergency surgery, so I'll be delivering your baby." "How are we doing?" "Scared," Sarah admitted. "That's perfectly normal," he said, checking her chart. "I understand you've had quite a traumatic day, but your baby's heart rate is strong, and you're progressing well. We're going to take excellent care of both of you." As he examined her, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. Emma checked it and gasped. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "It's from Rebecca. Madison's talking. She's confessing to everything, including—" Emma trailed off. "Including what? Including what happened to Richard's second wife? Sarah, she pushed her down the stairs when she was pregnant. The baby died, and the wife committed suicide. Madison and Richard covered it up." Sarah felt sick. "Oh my God. He knew what she was capable of, and he brought her near me." "Don't think about that now," Dr. Holbrook interjected. "Focus on your breathing. Focus on your baby." But Sarah couldn't stop thinking about it. The pattern was clear now. Richard picked young, vulnerable women, used them, and then discarded them when someone more interesting came along. And Madison had been his willing accomplice, eliminating obstacles. "I could have been next," Sarah whispered. But you weren't, Emma said firmly. You're here, you're safe, and you're about to bring a beautiful baby into the world. Another contraction hit, this one so strong that Sarah screamed. Dr. Anderson checked her again. 10 centimeters. It's time to push. The next hour was a blur of pain and effort. Sarah pushed with everything she had, Emma holding one leg and a nurse holding the other. Dr. Holbrook stood by her head, coaching her through each push. I can't, Sarah sobbed after what felt like the 100th push. I'm not strong enough. Yes, you are, Emma said fiercely. You survived Richard. You survived Madison. You survived years of abuse. You can do this. Think of your mother, Dr. Holbrook added. Think of Helen's strength. It's in you. Sarah thought of her mother, of the secrets she'd kept, the pain she'd endured. She thought of the sister she'd lost and found again. She thought of the father she'd never known was watching over her in that courtroom. And she found a reserve of strength she didn't know existed. One more big push, Dr. Anderson encouraged. The head is almost out. Sarah bore down with everything she had, a primal scream tearing from her throat. And then, suddenly, the pressure was gone, replaced by a thin, angry wail. It's a boy, Dr. Anderson announced, placing the squirming, crying baby on Sarah's chest. A perfect, healthy boy. Sarah looked down at her son through tears of joy and exhaustion. He was small but perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in protest at being born. The moment he was placed on her chest, he stopped crying, as if recognizing her heartbeat. He's beautiful, Emma whispered, tears streaming down her own face. What's his name? Sarah hadn't decided. She'd gone back and forth on names for months. But looking at him now, she knew. William, she said softly. William Patterson Parker, after both his grandfathers. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Sarah. He should know where he comes from. All of it. The good and the complicated. Dr. Holbrook smiled. Your mother would be so proud. As the nurses cleaned and measured baby William, Sarah's phone rang. Emma answered it, stepping away to talk. When she returned, her face was pale. That was Rebecca. Richard's been arrested. Madison gave the police enough evidence to charge him as an accessory to murder. And Sarah, Judge Patterson knows about you being his daughter. Rebecca had to tell him to explain why she needed emergency custody papers drawn up. What did he say? He's on his way here. If you don't want to see him. No, Sarah interrupted. I want to meet him. William should know his grandfather. An hour later, after Sarah had been moved to a recovery room and William had been fed for the first time, there was a soft knock at the door. Judge Patterson entered, still in his judicial robes, his face a mix of emotions Sarah couldn't read. He stood at the foot of her bed, seemingly at a loss for words. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. I had 2 daughters. All this time, I had 2 daughters, and I didn't know. Mom never told you, Sarah asked. He shook his head. After Emma found me, I wondered if Helen had other children, but I never imagined. You were in my courtroom today. My daughter was being hurt in front of me, and I didn't know. You protected me anyway, Sarah pointed out, even without knowing. May I? He gestured toward the baby. Sarah nodded, and Emma carefully placed William in his grandfather's arms. Judge Patterson looked down at his grandson with wonder. He's named after you, Sarah said quietly. And my adoptive father. I want him to know his whole family history. Helen would have loved this, Judge Patterson said, his voice breaking. She always wanted our families to be together. We are now, Emma said, putting an arm around Sarah. Maybe not in the way she imagined, but we're here. As they sat together, 3 generations united by secrets, pain, and ultimately love, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be trials, literally and figuratively. Richard and Madison would have to face justice. Sarah would have to rebuild her life as a single mother. But she wasn't alone. She had a sister who'd searched for her, a father who'd unknowingly protected her, and a son who would grow up surrounded by love instead of narcissistic abuse. The baby stirred in his grandfather's arms, and Judge Patterson began to hum softly an old lullaby that Sarah recognized with a start. Her mother used to hum the same tune. "Mom taught you that?" Emma asked, apparently recognizing it too. "No," Judge Patterson said softly. "I taught it to her. She must have remembered." In that moment, Sarah understood that love could transcend time, secrets, and even death. Her mother had given her more than she'd ever known: a sister's protection, a father's justice, and the strength to stand up to those who would harm her. 3 days after William's birth, Sarah sat in her hospital bed, finally able to process everything that had happened. The small room had become a sanctuary of sorts, filled with flowers from well-wishers and guarded by hospital security after Richard's arrest made national news. Emma arrived early that morning with coffee and bagels, a routine they'd quickly established. She moved around the room with easy familiarity, adjusting blinds and organizing the growing pile of legal documents that seemed to multiply daily. "The media is calling it the slap heard around the world," Emma said, showing Sarah her phone. "The video has gone viral. 20 million views and counting." Sarah winced. "There's video to courthouse security camera. It's actually helping our case. The public is completely on your side. Madison attacking a pregnant woman in court. Even Richard's PR team can't spin that." Baby William stirred in his bassinet, making small sucking sounds. Sarah reached for him, still marveling at how natural it felt to be his mother. "What's the latest from Rebecca?" Emma's expression grew serious. "Richard's bail was set at $5 million. He posted it immediately. Of course, Madison's was set at $500,000, but no one's come forward to pay it. So she's still in jail and singing like a canary. Detective Roberts says she's given them enough to put Richard away for 20 years. Financial fraud, conspiracy, and potentially murder charges for his second wife." Sarah adjusted William's position, letting him nurse. "I still can't believe he knew. When Madison said she'd done it before?" "Don't think about that," Emma said firmly, sitting on the bed beside her. "Focus on this little guy and getting better." "I can't stop thinking about it, though. What if I hadn't found out about the affair? What if I'd stayed? Would I have been next?" Emma took her free hand. "But you didn't stay. You got out. You're safe. Because of you. If you hadn't shown up at the courthouse, I should have come sooner. I watched you for weeks, trying to figure out how to approach you. I was scared you'd reject me." Sarah squeezed her hand. "How could I reject you? You're my sister. The sister I always wanted but thought I'd imagined." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching William nurse. Then Emma spoke again, her voice tentative. "Can I tell you something about why I became a lawyer?" Sarah nodded, sensing this was important. "When I was 15, I was in an abusive relationship," Emma began. "He was older, 18. Everyone thought he was perfect good grades, star athlete, charming. But behind closed doors, he was controlling, manipulative. He isolated me from friends, monitored my phone, told me I was nothing without him." Sarah's heart ached for her sister. "Emma, it went on for a year before Mom found out. She'd been suspicious, but I was good at hiding the bruises. When she finally saw them, she didn't hesitate. She marched down to the police station and filed charges. Then she found me the best therapist and lawyer she could afford." "What happened to him?" "He pled down to a misdemeanor and got probation, but Mom made sure everyone knew what he'd done. She protected me fiercely, even when I was angry at her for ruining my life, as I called it then." Emma's eyes were distant, lost in memory. "She told me something I'll never forget. She said, 'Women have to protect each other because the world won't do it for us. We're each other's safety net.'" "That sounds like Mom," Sarah said softly. She talked about you constantly during that time. How she wished you could know me, support me. She said sisters were supposed to face these things together. And now we are, Sarah said. Just 20 years late. Emma laughed, wiping tears from her eyes. Better late than never. There was a knock at the door, and Rebecca Taylor entered, looking every inch the powerful attorney despite having clearly pulled an all-nighter. Good morning, ladies. How's our little warrior? She smiled at William, who had finished nursing and was now sleeping contentedly. Perfect, Sarah said. What's the news? Rebecca's smile turned predatory. Oh, I have such good news. Richard's assets have been frozen pending the criminal investigation. The forensic accountants found hidden accounts worth millions that he didn't disclose. We're talking massive financial fraud. What does that mean for the divorce? It means you're getting everything you deserve and more. But that's not even the best part. Rebecca pulled out her tablet. Madison's confession included details about Richard's business practices. Apparently, he's been using his company to launder money for some very unsavory people. Sarah's eyes widened. Money laundering? The FBI is now involved. Richard Mitchell is going down, and he's going down hard. Emma whistled low. He really thought he was untouchable. Men like him always do, Rebecca said, until they face women who refuse to be victims. Dr. Patricia Holbrook entered then, carrying a small teddy bear. I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to check on my favorite patient. We were just discussing Richard's impending downfall, Emma said with satisfaction. Dr. Holbrook set the bear in William's bassinet. How are you processing all of this? Sarah, it's a lot of change very quickly. Sarah considered the question. I feel free. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can breathe. Is that wrong? Should I feel guilty? Why would you feel guilty, Doctor? Holbrook asked. Because I loved him once, or I thought I did, and now his life is destroyed. He destroyed his own life, Rebecca said firmly. You just stopped letting him destroy yours. She's right. Dr. Holbrook agreed. What you're feeling is completely normal. You're grieving the relationship you thought you had while celebrating your freedom from what it actually was. Judge Patterson appeared in the doorway, carrying a bouquet of pink roses. I'm sorry, is this a bad time? Dad Emma stood to hug him. It was still strange for Sarah to hear Emma call him that, to see their easy affection. How are my girls today? He asked, his eyes soft as they landed on Sarah and William. We're good, Sarah said, still getting used to having a father figure in her life. William's eating well and sleeping better. May I? He gestured toward the baby. Sarah nodded, and he carefully picked up his grandson, holding him with practiced ease. You've done this before? She observed. Emma had terrible colic as a baby, he said, then caught himself. I mean, that's what your mother told me when we reconnected briefly when Emma was about 1. I got to hold her a few times before she disappeared again. Emma finished. It's okay. Dad, we all did what we thought was best at the time. As Judge Patterson rocked William, Rebecca's phone buzzed. She checked it and gasped. What now? Sarah asked, almost afraid to know. Madison's lawyer just contacted me. She wants to make a deal. Full testimony against Richard in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of testimony? Emma asked. Everything. Every crime. Every affair. Every financial manipulation. She has recordings. Sarah. She secretly recorded Richard for years as insurance. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. She was planning to blackmail him, Sarah said slowly. That's why she was so confident. Exactly. But she didn't count on him throwing her under the bus the moment she became inconvenient. Judge Patterson spoke carefully. I shouldn't comment on an active case, but speaking purely as a grandfather, I hope justice is served fully. It will be, Rebecca promised. I'll make sure of it. Dr. Holbrook checked her watch. I have to go, but Sarah, I want to see you next week for a session. You're going to need support processing all of this. After she left, Sarah looked around the room at her assembled support system, her sister, her father, her attorney. 6 months ago, she'd felt completely alone. Now she had a family, a real family that chose to stand by her. "I want to establish a foundation," Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "For women like me, young women trapped in abusive relationships who think they have no options, I want to use whatever money I get from Richard to help others escape." Emma's face lit up. "I'll help. I can provide legal services. I can connect you with other judges and legal professionals who'd support this," Judge Patterson added. "And I'll make sure you get enough money to make a real difference," Rebecca said with a shark-like smile. William made a small sound, and Sarah looked down at him. "Your daddy might be a narcissistic criminal, but you're going to grow up surrounded by people who fight for justice. You're going to learn that real strength isn't about controlling others, it's about lifting them up." The afternoon sun slanted through the hospital windows as Sarah prepared for discharge. William, now 5 days old, slept peacefully in his car seat while Emma helped pack the accumulated gifts and flowers. The media attention had been overwhelming. Every major news outlet wanted an interview with the woman whose divorce hearing had exposed a murder conspiracy. "The car's ready," Emma said, zipping up the last bag. "Security will escort us to the parking garage. There are still reporters everywhere." Sarah nodded, adjusting William's blanket one more time. She was nervous about leaving the safety of the hospital, but Dr. Anderson had cleared them both for discharge. "Wait," a familiar voice called from the doorway. Judge Patterson stood there, looking unusually uncertain. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment, Sarah?" Emma started to leave, but Sarah stopped her. "Stay, please, we're family." Judge Patterson entered, closing the door behind him. He seemed to struggle with his words, so different from the commanding presence he showed in court. "I've been thinking about your mother," he finally said. "About Helen, about the choices she made." Sarah waited, sensing this was important. "She came to my courtroom once," he continued, "about 15 years ago. You would have been 13. It was a custody modification hearing. Your father wanted to move out of state with you." Sarah's breath caught. "I remember that. Dad said Mom was being unreasonable. She fought like a lioness for you. Represented herself because she couldn't afford an attorney. I didn't know who she was to me then, of course, but I remember being impressed by her determination. Did she win? Partially. I denied the relocation request, but had to maintain the custody arrangement. Your father had better resources, a stable home. Your mother was struggling financially." His voice grew thick with regret. "If I'd known she was the Helen I'd loved, if I'd known you were my daughter." "You couldn't have known," Sarah said gently. "But I should have seen it. You have her eyes, her chin. And the way you held yourself in my courtroom during your hearing, it was exactly how she stood that day. Dignified despite everything." Emma moved closer to their father. "Dad, you can't torture yourself with what-ifs." "Can't I? I had 2 daughters I didn't know about. Helen struggled alone while I advanced my career. Became successful. Could have helped." "She made her choice," Sarah said, surprising herself with the lack of bitterness in her voice. "Mom was proud. She wouldn't have wanted help from someone she'd walked away from." Judge Patterson pulled out a worn envelope from his jacket. "She sent me this letter a month before she died. I've carried it ever since Emma found me, but I haven't had the courage to open it." He handed it to Sarah. Her name was written on the front in her mother's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in her mother's careful script. "My dearest William, if you're reading this, then Emma has found you, just as I knew she would. She's like you, determined, brilliant, unable to let a mystery go unsolved. There's something else you need to know. You have another daughter. Sarah is yours, or though she doesn't know it. David Parker agreed to raise her as his own in exchange for my silence about his affairs. It seemed like the best solution at the time. I was young and foolish and thought I was protecting everyone. But I was wrong. I robbed you of 2 daughters. I robbed them of a father and each other. It's my greatest regret. Sarah is special. William. She has your sense of justice, but also a gentleness that will make her vulnerable to those who would exploit it. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and she's alone. Please, if you can find it in your heart, watch over her. She'll need protection, though she won't know to ask for it. I never stopped loving you. I hope someday you can forgive me. Forever yours, Helen. The letter trembled in Sarah's hands. She knew. She knew you'd find each other. Judge Patterson was crying openly now, something Sarah suspected he rarely did. She tried to tell me so many times. There were phone calls where she'd start to say something, then stop. Now I understand. We can't change the past, Emma said, her own voice thick with emotion. But we're here now, all of us. William chose that moment to wake, his small cry filling the room. Sarah lifted him from his car seat, holding him close. Your grandson needs you, she said to Judge Patterson. We both do. It doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is that we're family now. Judge Patterson moved closer, his hand hovering uncertainly over William's head. I want to be a good grandfather, a good father, but I don't know how. I've been a judge for so long. I've forgotten how to just be a person. You protected me in that courtroom, Sarah reminded him. Even before you knew, that's being a father. And you've been wonderful with me, Emma added. Patient, kind, making up for lost time without pushing too hard. You girls are being too generous, he said, but Sarah could see how much their words meant to him. Rebecca Taylor entered without knocking, her face grim. We have a problem. Everyone tensed. Richard's out on bail and he's been giving interviews. He's spinning the story, claiming Madison manipulated him, that he's a victim too. Some people are buying it. Sarah felt the familiar flutter of panic in her chest. He's trying to control the narrative. Not on my watch, Rebecca said firmly. I've arranged for you to do one interview, just one, with a journalist I trust. We tell your story, the whole story, and then we let the legal system do its work. I don't know if I'm ready. You are, Emma interrupted. You're the strongest person I know. She's right, Judge Patterson said. And you won't be alone. We'll all be there with you. Sarah looked down at William, who was gazing up at her with unfocused eyes. For him, she could do anything. When, she asked Rebecca, tomorrow afternoon, at Emma's apartment, neutral territory, comfortable setting. Speaking of which, Emma said, you're both coming home with me. I have plenty of room, and you shouldn't be alone. Sarah started to protest, but Emma cut her off. Mom would haunt me if I let you go anywhere else. Besides, William needs to know his aunt's place. It's going to be his second home. As they prepared to leave, Detective Michelle Roberts arrived. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have news. Good or bad? Sarah asked warily. Both. Madison's agreed to testify. She's given us everything: documents, recordings, even video. Richard's going to prison for a very long time. And the bad news, he's liquidating assets quickly, trying to hide money offshore. We're working to stop it, but some damage has been done. Rebecca's eyes flashed. How much? About 10 million so far. But don't worry, we're tracking it. And with the hidden accounts we found, there's still plenty for Mrs. Mitchell and William. It's not about the money, Sarah said quietly. It never was. It's about justice. And you'll have both, Judge Patterson said with the authority of his position. I may have to recuse myself from the criminal case, but I have colleagues who will ensure justice is served. As they made their way to the parking garage, surrounded by security and family, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. The man she'd married had turned out to be a monster, but from the ashes of that relationship, she'd gained so much more. Thank you, she said to Emma as they reached the car. For what? For finding me? For being my sister? for not giving up. Emma hugged her carefully, mindful of William between them. Family doesn't give up. Mom taught us that. Judge Patterson loaded the bags into the trunk, looking more like a regular grandfather than a distinguished jurist. Helen would be so proud, he said softly. Of both of you. Emma's apartment was a revelation, spacious, modern, but warm, with photographs covering every surface. Sarah discovered that many were of her, pictures Emma had found or their mother had sent over the years. It was like seeing her life through someone else's eyes. This is from your high school graduation, Emma said, pointing to one photo. Mom was so proud. She cried for hours after. Sarah traced the image with her finger. She looked so young, so hopeful. I thought she didn't come because she didn't care. Your father wouldn't let her. She watched from across the street. The interview was in 2 hours. Rebecca had prepared Sarah with potential questions, but nothing could really prepare her for telling her story to the world. William was nursing when the journalist arrived, a woman in her 40s named Patricia Chen, with kind eyes and a reputation for handling sensitive stories with care. Thank you for trusting me with this, Patricia said, setting up her recorder. I want you to know that you have complete control. If you need to stop at any time, we stop. Sarah nodded, adjusting William in her arms. Emma sat beside her. Judge Patterson stood behind the couch, and Rebecca positioned herself where Sarah could see her for support. Let's start from the beginning, Patricia said gently. How did you meet Richard Mitchell? Sarah took a breath and began. I was 25, working at a charity fundraiser. He was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted. He pursued me relentlessly, flowers, gifts, surprise trips. I thought it was romantic. Now I know it was love bombing. When did things change? Gradually. So gradually I didn't notice at first. He'd make comments about my friends being jealous of our relationship, suggest I didn't need to work since he could provide everything. Before I knew it, I was isolated, financially dependent, and completely under his control. Tell me about the narcissistic abuse. Sarah looked at William, drawing strength from his peaceful face. Narcissistic abuse is insidious because it makes you doubt your own reality. Richard would tell me I was overreacting, too sensitive, that I was lucky he put up with me. He'd give me the silent treatment for days if I disagreed with him, then act like nothing happened. And when you got pregnant, he was furious, accused me of trying to trap him. That's when I found out about Madison. Patricia leaned forward. The woman who assaulted you in court, yes, though I've learned she was more than just his mistress. She was his accomplice in terrible things. You mean his second wife's death? Sarah nodded, tears starting to fall. A young woman and her baby died because of them, and I could have been next. Emma took her hand as Patricia continued. How do you feel about Richard now? Sarah considered the question. I pity him. He's so empty inside that he has to destroy others to feel powerful. But I also want him held accountable, not just for me, but for all his victims. And Madison, she's a predator who found a willing partner in Richard. They enabled each other's worst impulses. Patricia turned to Judge Patterson. Your Honor, how does it feel to discover this family connection in such circumstances? Judge Patterson cleared his throat. It's been humbling. I've spent my career dispensing justice, but I failed to see the injustice happening to my own daughter. It's made me reconsider many things. Will you preside over the criminal case? No. I've recused myself, but I trust my colleagues to handle it appropriately. The interview continued for another hour. Sarah talked about the SLAP, the emergency delivery, finding her sister and father. By the end, she was exhausted but felt lighter somehow. One last question, Patricia said. What message do you have for other women in similar situations? Sarah looked directly at the camera they'd set up. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not alone. The shame isn't yours, it belongs to your abuser. And you deserve so much better. There are people who will believe you, support you, and help you escape. Please reach out. Your life is waiting on the other side of fear." After Patricia left, they sat in silence for a moment. Then Rebecca's phone exploded with notifications. "What is it?" Emma asked. Rebecca was scrolling rapidly. "The interview won't air until tomorrow, but someone leaked that it happened. Richard's having a meltdown on social media." She showed them his posts rambling, angry messages about being persecuted, about Sarah being a gold digger, about the unfairness of it all. "He's destroying himself," Judge Patterson observed. "No lawyer would advise this." "James Bradley dropped him as a client this morning," Rebecca said with satisfaction. "No one wants to be associated with him now." William started crying, and Sarah stood to walk him around the apartment. As she passed the window, she saw a crowd gathering outside. "Emma, look." Emma joined her at the window. Below, women were holding signs: "Justice for Sarah," "Protect pregnant women," "Believe survivors." "They're supporting you," Emma said in wonder. "They're supporting all of us," Sarah corrected. "Every woman who's been where I've been." The next morning, the interview aired. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times. The response was overwhelming, thousands of women sharing their own stories, offering support, demanding justice. But the real victory came that afternoon when Detective Roberts called. "We got him," she said simply. "Richard's been arrested for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and fraud. No bail this time. He's not getting out." Sarah sank onto the couch, William in her arms. "It's over. The criminal case is just beginning. But yes, he's going away for a long time." After she hung up, Sarah looked at her assembled family. "I want to go to the courthouse." "Why?" Emma asked. "To see him arrested, to look him in the eye one last time." Judge Patterson stood. "Then we go together." The courthouse was surrounded by media and supporters. As their car pulled up, the crowd parted respectfully. Women reached out to touch Sarah gently, offering words of encouragement. Inside, they found a spot where they could see Richard being brought in. He was in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face haggard. When he saw Sarah, he tried to lunge toward her, but the officers held him back. "You did this!" he shouted. "You ruined everything!" Sarah stepped forward, William secure in her arms, Emma and Judge Patterson flanking her. "No, Richard, you did this. Every choice, every cruelty, every crime, that was all you. You're nothing without me. You were nobody before me, and you'll be nobody after." Sarah smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to confuse him. "You're wrong. I was somebody before you tried to break me. And I'm definitely somebody now. I'm a survivor, a mother, a sister, a daughter. I'm free." As the officers dragged him away, still ranting, Sarah turned to her family. "Let's go home." Outside, the crowd had grown. Someone started clapping, then another, until the sound was thunderous. Sarah stood on the courthouse steps, the same steps where her life had changed just days ago, and raised her hand in acknowledgement. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah," the crowd chanted. "You've become a symbol," Emma said in her ear. "Then I better be worthy of it," Sarah replied. Rebecca appeared beside them. "The foundation paperwork is ready whenever you are, and Sarah Madison wants to meet with you." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Why?" "She says she has something important to tell you, something about your mother." The meeting with Madison was set for the following week at the county jail. Sarah had agonized over whether to go, but ultimately, the mention of her mother had decided it. Emma insisted on accompanying her, and Rebecca arranged for security. Madison looked different in her orange jumpsuit, smaller, somehow, without her designer clothes and carefully applied makeup. Her eyes, however, remained calculating. "Thank you for coming," Madison said, her voice lacking its usual venom. "You have 5 minutes," Sarah replied coldly. Madison laughed bitterly. "Still so proper. That's what Richard liked about you at first. You know, the perfect little wife who'd never challenge him. 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Fine. Your mother came to see me 2 years ago." Sarah's breath caught. That's impossible. She was already sick, though she hid it well. She knew about Richard and me. She'd hired a private investigator. Emma leaned forward. Why would she come to you? To warn me? Can you believe that she wanted to warn me about Richard? Said she'd seen what he'd done to his second wife, suspected what we'd done, and didn't want another woman to die. Sarah's hands trembled. My mother tried to save you. I laughed in her face, told her she was a pathetic old woman whose daughter had traded up. But she said something I'll never forget. She said, women like you think you're predators, but you're just another victim waiting to happen. He'll turn on you, too. She was right, Emma observed. Madison's face twisted. She left me her card, said to call if I ever needed help. I threw it away. But after Richard abandoned me in that courtroom, I remembered her words. Why are you telling me this? Sarah asked. Because I want you to know that your mother saw everything. She knew what Richard was, what I was, and she still tried to protect everyone. Even me. That takes a kind of strength I don't understand. Madison reached into her pocket and pulled out a small key. She gave me this, said if anything happened to her, I should give it to you. I kept it. Don't ask me why. The guard allowed Rebecca to take the key and pass it to Sarah. It was small, brass with a number engraved on it. Safety deposit box, Rebecca said. Looks like First National Bank. Sarah stared at the key, then at Madison. Is this some kind of game? No game. Your mother was the only person who ever looked at me and saw a human being instead of just a threat or a tool. I owe her this much. As they left the jail, Sarah clutched the key tightly. We need to go to the bank now. First National Bank was an old institution downtown, all marble and mahogany. The manager recognized Judge Patterson and expedited the process of accessing the safety deposit box. In the private viewing room, Sarah opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were documents, photographs, and a letter addressed to her. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've somehow met Madison. I pray she gave you this key as I asked, though I know it's unlikely. I've been watching Richard for 2 years now. I hired investigators, gathered evidence, documented everything. I know what he is, what he's capable of. I wanted to protect you, but I knew you wouldn't believe me. You were too in love, too trusting. So I've done what I could from the shadows. The evidence in this box should help if you ever need to divorce him or press charges. There are recordings, photographs, financial documents showing his money laundering, and statements from women he's hurt before you. I also included something else, documentation of your true parentage. William Patterson is your biological father. I've included the DNA test I had done when you were a baby. I'm sorry I kept this from you, but I was young and scared and thought I was protecting everyone. Know that everything I did was out of love. You were the light of my life, my greatest achievement. Be strong, my darling girl. You have more allies than you know. All my love. Mom Sarah sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Emma grabbed the documents, scanning through them quickly. Oh my God, Sarah, this is everything. Photos of Richard meeting with known criminals, recordings of him discussing money laundering, evidence about his second wife's death. Your mother built an entire case. Judge Patterson was examining the DNA test results. She had this done 28 years ago. She knew all along and kept the proof. Rebecca was on her phone immediately. I need to get this to Detective Roberts. This is a goldmine of evidence. But Sarah was reading another letter. This one's shorter, to Emma. I know you'll find Sarah eventually. You're too stubborn not to. Please protect her. She doesn't have your strength, your experience with fighting back. Be the sister I couldn't let you be. Love. Helen. Emma was crying now, holding the letter. She knew I'd come for you. She orchestrated all of this, Sarah said in wonder. Even from beyond the grave, she was protecting us. There was a knock on the door. The bank manager entered, looking concerned. Judge Patterson, There's a Mr. Mitchell here demanding access to this box. He says his wife, ex-wife, Sarah corrected firmly, and he has no legal right to this box. Shall I call security? Judge Patterson stood. No, I'll handle this. He walked out, and they could hear his voice, authoritative and cold. Mr. Mitchell, you're violating the restraining order by being within 500 feet of Sarah. You have 30 seconds to leave before I have you arrested. Richard's response was inaudible, but they heard footsteps retreating quickly. Judge Patterson returned. He's gone, but he knows we have something. Good, Sarah said with newfound steel in her voice. Let him worry. That evening, they gathered at Emma's apartment to go through everything. The evidence was damning. Richard would likely spend the rest of his life in prison. But it was the personal items that affected Sarah most. Photos of her mother watching her from afar at graduations, recitals, her wedding, always there, always protecting, even when Sarah didn't know. She was my guardian angel, Sarah whispered. William began crying, and Sarah picked him up from his bassinet. As she held him, she felt her mother's presence somehow, approving, proud. We should use this for the foundation, Sarah said suddenly. Some of these documents detail Richard's hidden assets. Once they're seized, that money could help so many women. The Helen Parker Foundation, Emma suggested, for women escaping narcissistic abuse. Perfect, Judge Patterson agreed. Your mother's legacy of protection continuing. As they planned and discussed, Sarah felt a shift inside herself. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was becoming a warrior, like her mother, like Emma. The pain was transforming into purpose. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. Richard, Rebecca said, looking at the message. He's desperate. Let him be, Sarah said, surprising herself with her calm. He can't hurt us anymore. Mom made sure of that. She looked around the room at her family, her support system, her future. Richard had tried to break her, but instead, he'd freed her to become who she was meant to be. 2 months later, Sarah stood outside the courthouse once again, but this time, she stood tall. William, now 3 months old, was in Emma's arms, and Judge Patterson flanked her other side. The criminal trial was beginning, and she would be the star witness. The media presence was even larger than before. The story had gone international, a young pregnant woman assaulted in court, discovering her family, exposing a murder. It had everything: drama, justice, family reunions, and a villain everyone loved to hate. You don't have to do this, Rebecca said for the 10th time. Your mother's evidence is enough. I need to, Sarah replied. For closure, for all his victims. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Richard sat at the defense table with his new attorney, looking gaunt and angry. Madison was being tried separately and had agreed to testify against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. The prosecutor, District Attorney James Morrison, was known for his thorough preparation and devastating cross-examinations. He'd told Sarah that with her mother's evidence and Madison's testimony, conviction was all but certain. The prosecution calls Sarah Mitchell to the stand. Sarah walked forward, each step measured and confident. She'd practiced this moment with Dr. Holbrook, visualizing herself strong and composed. After being sworn in, she sat and looked directly at Richard for the first time since his arrest. He tried to intimidate her with his stare, but she didn't flinch. Mrs. Mitchell, Morrison began, please tell the court about your marriage to the defendant. Sarah spoke clearly, detailing the progression from love bombing to isolation to abuse. She talked about the financial control, the gaslighting, the constant criticism that had worn away her self-esteem. He told me I was lucky he chose me, she said, that no one else would want someone as pathetic as me. He said it so often I started to believe it. When did you discover the affair? 6 months before the divorce hearing. I found texts between him and Madison Cole, also known as Madison Williams. How did that discovery affect you? I was devastated but also relieved. It gave me a reason to leave that others would understand. Leaving because of emotional abuse felt harder to justify, even to myself. Morrison introduced the evidence photos, recordings, financial documents. Each piece painted a picture of Richard as a calculating criminal who used his wealth and charm to destroy lives. Mrs. Mitchell, were you aware of what happened to the defendant's second wife? Not until Madison confessed. But looking back, there were signs. Richard would sometimes say things like, "You don't want to end up like Caroline." I thought he meant divorced. Now I know he meant dead. Richard's attorney, Paul Stevens, stood for cross-examination. He was young, hungry, clearly trying to make a name for himself. "Mrs. Mitchell, isn't it true that you married my client for his money?" "No, I married him because I thought he loved me. But you enjoyed the lifestyle his wealth provided." "I enjoyed sharing a life with someone I thought was my partner. The money was never what mattered." "Yet here you are seeking a significant divorce settlement." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "I'm seeking what's fair after years of unpaid labor as his wife, hostess, and emotional support. And more importantly, I'm seeking support for our son, who deserves to be provided for by his father. A son whose paternity my client questions." Sarah felt Emma tense in the gallery but remained calm. "Richard knows William is his son. The DNA test confirmed it. His denial is just another attempt to avoid responsibility." Stevens tried various angles, but Sarah had been well prepared. She answered each question honestly but carefully, never losing her composure. Finally, Morrison stood for redirect. "Mrs. Mitchell, what impact has this experience had on your life?" Sarah thought carefully. "It's destroyed who I was, but allowed me to become who I'm meant to be. I've found family I didn't know existed. I've discovered strength I didn't know I had. And I've learned that women supporting women can overcome even the most powerful abusers." As she left the stand, she passed Madison being brought in to testify. Their eyes met, and Madison nodded slightly, a recognition of sorts. Predator acknowledging prey who'd become a warrior. Madison's testimony was devastating. She detailed every crime, every plan, every cover-up. She played recordings of Richard discussing the murder of his second wife, his money laundering operations, his plans to destroy Sarah if she didn't comply with the divorce. "He said pregnant women were easy to get rid of," Madison said, her voice flat. "One push down the stairs, and the problem solves itself." The gallery gasped. Several jurors looked sick. "Did he specifically discuss doing this to Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes. He said if she fought the divorce, we'd handle her like we handled Caroline." Richard jumped up. "You lying bitch, you said you'd protect me." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Mitchell, control yourself or you'll be removed." "She's lying. This was all her idea. She's the one who pushed Caroline." Madison smiled coldly. "I have the recording of you telling me to do it. Richard, would you like me to play it?" The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order, but the damage was done. Richard had essentially confessed in open court. During a recess, Sarah stood in the hallway with her family. William was fussing, and she nursed him discreetly while Emma shielded her from prying eyes. "It's almost over," Judge Patterson said. "He's finished." Detective Roberts approached them. "Sarah, you did amazingly up there. Your mother would be proud." "She's the real hero," Sarah replied. "Her evidence is what's convicting him." "No," Roberts disagreed. "You're the hero. You survived, you stood up, and you're helping other women do the same." The Helen Parker Foundation had already helped dozens of women in just 2 months. Emma ran the legal services, Sarah provided peer support, and Judge Patterson had recruited other legal professionals to volunteer. When court resumed, Richard took the stand against his lawyer's advice. His testimony was a rambling mess of accusations, denials, and eventually, angry confessions. "Yes, I had affairs. Yes, I hid money. But Caroline's death was an accident. Madison misunderstood what I meant." What did you mean, Mr. Mitchell? Morrison asked smoothly. I just wanted her gone, I retry, and continue edit. I just wanted her gone. I didn't mean for anyone to die, but someone did die. Your pregnant wife, an unborn child? Richard's face contorted. That wasn't supposed to happen. Madison took it too far. So you admit to conspiracy, Stevens objected frantically, but the damage was done. Richard had implicated himself completely. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Sarah waited in a small room with her family, William sleeping peacefully in his carrier, unaware of the momentous events unfolding. Whatever happens, Emma said, you've already won. You're free, you have William, and you have us. And the foundation is helping so many women, Rebecca added. Your story has inspired a movement. When the bailiff called them back, Sarah's heart pounded. She held Emma's hand tightly as the jury foreman stood. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of murder in the second degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of money laundering, we find the defendant guilty. The list went on. Guilty on all counts. Richard would spend the rest of his life in prison. Richard turned to stare at Sarah as the officers prepared to take him away. You've ruined everything, he spat. Sarah stood, holding William. No, Richard, I've reclaimed everything. My life, my dignity, my family. You're the one who lost everything, and you did it to yourself. As he was led away in shackles, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was truly over. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of supporters had gathered. They cheered as Sarah emerged, many holding signs with messages of support in solidarity. Patricia Chen was there with her camera crew. Sarah, how do you feel, free? Sarah said simply. And grateful. Grateful for my sister who found me, my father who protected me without even knowing who I was, and my mother who protected me even after death. What's next for you? Raising my son to be a good man, growing the foundation, helping other women find their freedom. Any words for women in similar situations? Sarah looked directly into the camera. You are stronger than you know. Your abuser wants you to believe you're weak, that you need them, but it's a lie. They need you, your energy, your light, your strength. Take it back. Walk away. Run if you have to. There's a whole community waiting to catch you. That evening, they gathered at Judge Patterson's house, a beautiful colonial he'd rarely used, preferring his city apartment. But now it was filling with family. Emma had moved some things over, planning regular visits. Sarah and William had their own room for whenever they wanted to stay. I never thought I'd have this, Judge Patterson said, watching William sleep in his arms. A family, grandchildren. Helen gave me this gift, even though I didn't deserve it. She forgave you, Sarah said softly. She wanted us all to be together. Emma raised her wine glass. To Helen Parker, the strongest woman we never fully knew. To Mom, Sarah agreed, raising her water. To the mother of my children, Judge Patterson added, his voice thick with emotion. As they toasted, William opened his eyes and made a happy gurgling sound, as if agreeing with the sentiment. Later, Sarah stood on the porch, looking at the stars. Emma joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom had lived? Emma asked. Every day, but I think she knew her time was limited. That's why she set everything in motion. The evidence, the key with Madison, even making sure you'd find me. Fine. As she was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Sarah laughed, a real, genuine laugh that had been absent for so long. Richard never stood a chance against her. Or against you. You know you're incredible, right? The way you handled everything. The foundation. Raising William alone. I'm not alone, Sarah interrupted. I have you. I have Dad. I have Rebecca and Dr. Holbrook and all the women who've reached out to support me. The sisterhood, Emma said with a smile. The sisterhood, Sarah agreed. William started crying inside, and Sarah went to tend to him. As she nursed her son in the rocking chair her father had bought, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain had been unbearable at times, but it had forged her into someone unbreakable. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman in Texas. "Your story saved my life. I left him today." Sarah smiled through tears. This was her purpose now, not just surviving, but helping others survive too. 6 months after the trial, the Helen Parker Foundation hosted its first major fundraising gala. The ballroom of the Grand Harbor Hotel was transformed into an elegant space filled with supporters, survivors, and advocates. Sarah stood at the entrance, greeting guests. William balanced on her hip in a tiny tuxedo. "You clean up nice," Emma said, approaching in a stunning burgundy gown. "You too," Sarah replied. "Is Dad here yet?" "He's inside, charming donors. Turns out judges have excellent fundraising skills." The foundation had grown exponentially. They now had a staff of 23 safe houses and had helped over 200 women escape abusive relationships. The media attention from the trial had brought donations flooding in, but more importantly, it had brought awareness. Rebecca approached with a tall woman in an elegant suit. "Sarah, this is Dr. Amanda Foster. She runs a similar foundation in California and wants to discuss a partnership." As Sarah chatted with Dr. Foster, she noticed a familiar figure across the room. Detective Michelle Roberts, now retired from the force, had joined the foundation as head of security. "Any problems?" Sarah asked her quietly during a break in conversations. "None at all, though there's someone here who wants to speak with you privately. She says she knew your mother." Intrigued, Sarah followed Roberts to a quiet corner where an elderly woman sat, her silver hair elegantly styled. "Mrs. Anderson," Sarah said, recognizing her former neighbor. "Hello, dear. You look wonderful. Your mother would be so proud. Thank you for coming." Mrs. Anderson pulled out an envelope. "I have something for you. Helen gave this to me years ago. Told me to give it to you when you'd found your strength. I think that time is now." Sarah opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph of her mother holding a baby Sarah with another young woman beside her, holding another baby. "That's me," Mrs. Anderson said. "And that's my daughter. We were both single mothers, supporting each other. Your mother saved us. You know, my ex-husband was abusive, and Helen helped me escape. She testified in court. Let us stay with her, even helped me get a job." Sarah stared at the photo, seeing her mother in a new light yet again. "She started helping women long before you were born," Mrs. Anderson continued. "Unofficially, quietly but consistently. This foundation, it's not just continuing her work, it's making it official. I had no idea. She didn't want recognition, but she'd want you to know that you're not just following in her footsteps, you're walking a path she blazed." As Mrs. Anderson rejoined the party, Sarah stood holding the photograph. Her mother had been fighting this fight for decades. "Sarah," Judge Patterson appeared beside her. "It's time for your speech." The ballroom fell silent as Sarah took the podium, William now in Emma's arms in the front row. "6 months ago," Sarah began, "I was a victim. I'd been emotionally abused, financially controlled, and physically assaulted while 8 months pregnant. I thought my life was over." The audience was riveted. "But I learned something important. Rock bottom can be a foundation. The worst moment of your life can become the turning point. I was slapped in a courtroom, went into labor from trauma, and discovered my husband was involved in murder. But I also found my sister, reunited with my father, and discovered my mother had been protecting me even after her death." She paused, looking at the faces before her. Many were survivors themselves. The Helen Parker Foundation isn't just about helping women escape abuse. It's about showing them that there's life after trauma. Beautiful, purposeful, powerful life. We provide legal services, safe housing, therapy, job training, and most importantly, community. Because healing happens in connection. The room erupted in applause. Tonight, I want to announce our newest initiative, the Warrior Women Program. We're partnering with companies nationwide to provide job opportunities for survivors. Economic independence is crucial for preventing women from returning to abusive situations. More applause. Sarah saw several CEOs nodding, ready to sign on. My mother, Helen Parker, helped women in secret for decades. Today, we do it in the open. We do it proudly. And we do it together. She raised her glass. To the warriors among us, those who've escaped, those still fighting, and those who didn't make it, we carry your stories, we honor your struggles, and we'll never stop fighting for justice. The standing ovation was thunderous. Sarah descended from the podium into Emma's embrace. Mom would be so proud, Emma whispered. She's here, Sarah replied. I can feel her. The rest of the evening was a blur of conversations, donations, and connections. By the end, they'd raised $3 million, enough to open 2 more safe houses and expand their legal services. As the evening wound down, a young woman approached Sarah hesitantly. She couldn't have been more than 22, with bruises poorly hidden by makeup. Are you Sarah Mitchell? She asked quietly. I am. And you are? Jessica. I need help. My boyfriend. He's like your ex-husband. I saw your interview and I thought, maybe. Sarah immediately shifted into advocate mode. Jessica, you're safe here. Let me introduce you to some people who can help tonight. She brought Jessica to Michelle Roberts and Dr. Holbrook, who immediately began safety planning. Within an hour, Jessica was on her way to one of their safe houses. Another life saved, Emma said, watching them leave. That's why we do this, Sarah replied. Judge Patterson joined them, looking tired but satisfied. I've been thinking, he said. I'm going to retire from the bench. Both daughters turned to him in surprise. Dad, no, Emma protested. You love being a judge. I love justice more. And I can do more good working with the foundation full-time. Besides, I want to spend time with my grandson, be the father I couldn't be before. Sarah hugged him tightly. We'd be honored to have you. As they prepared to leave, Sarah received a text from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold. It was similar to Richard's threatening messages from months ago. But when she opened it, she gasped. Thank you for saving my life. Madison. She showed it to Emma, who frowned. Do you think it's real? I don't know. But if even Madison can recognize what we're doing, then we're really making a difference. They left the hotel together, a family forged by secrets and strengthened by truth. William slept peacefully in his car seat, unaware of the legacy he'd been born into. As they drove home, Sarah thought about the future. William would grow up knowing his worth wasn't determined by wealth or power, but by how he treated others. He'd be raised by a village of strong women and good men who understood that real strength meant lifting others up. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the same courtroom where her life had changed forever. But this time she was there as an advocate, supporting another woman through her divorce from an abusive husband. The courtroom had been renovated, but Sarah could still see the spot where Madison had slapped her, where her water had broken, where she'd first seen her father without knowing who he was. You okay? Emma whispered beside her. Just remembering. It's different now. You're different. Sarah nodded. She was different, stronger, more confident, with a purpose that drove her every day. The case proceeded smoothly. The woman's husband reminded Sarah of Richard, charming on the surface, vicious underneath. But this woman had the foundation's full support from day one. She wouldn't suffer in silence for years like Sarah had. After the hearing, they met with the client in the foundation's new legal office, conveniently located across from the courthouse. You did great, Monica, Sarah assured her. The judge saw through his act. Because of your mother's evidence guidelines, Monica said gratefully. The documentation system you created, it saved me. Sarah had turned her mother's meticulous evidence gathering into a template for other women. The Helen Protocol, as they called it, had become standard practice for documenting abuse. William toddled into the office he was walking now, getting into everything. Judge Patterson, or Grandpa Judge, as William called him, was close behind. "Sorry," he said. He escaped from the playroom. Mama William reached for Sarah, who scooped him up. "This is my son," she told Monica. "Proof that beautiful things can come from terrible situations." Monica smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her. "He's perfect." "He's stubborn," Emma corrected, ruffling William's hair. "Like his mother." As Monica left with renewed hope, Sarah's phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Turn on the news," she said urgently. Sarah flipped on the office television. The breaking news banner read, "Richard Mitchell found dead in prison." Sarah sank into a chair, William still in her arms. The reporter continued, "Mitchell, who was serving life for murder and conspiracy, was found in his cell this morning. Officials are calling it suicide, though an investigation is ongoing." Sarah felt nothing or everything. She couldn't tell. "Are you okay?" Judge Patterson asked gently. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel something more." Relief, sadness. "But I just feel empty." Dr. Holbrook, who'd been observing a therapy session, joined them. "That's normal. Sarah, he was a significant part of your life, even if it was traumatic. It's okay to have complicated feelings." William squirmed to get down and toddled to his toy corner. Sarah watched him. This perfect little person who existed because of her relationship with Richard, but who would never know his father's cruelty. "He can't hurt anyone anymore," Emma said quietly. "No," Sarah agreed. "He can't." The news continued. Madison had been transferred to a psychiatric facility after multiple suicide attempts. She'd apparently had a complete breakdown, haunted by the ghosts of her victims. "I pity her," Sarah said, surprising herself. "She's living in a hell of her own making." That evening, they held an emergency board meeting for the foundation. The media would want statements, and they needed to be prepared. "We express condolences to any who mourn him," Sarah said carefully to the assembled board. "But our focus remains on supporting survivors and preventing future tragedies." "Well said," Judge Patterson agreed. After the meeting, Sarah walked through the foundation's main office. The walls were covered with photos and thank you letters from women they'd helped. Over 300 now, with more reaching out every day. She stopped at a new addition, a portrait of Helen Parker, painted by one of the survivors who'd rediscovered her artistic talents after escaping abuse. "Hi, Mom," Sarah said softly. "Richard's gone. It's really over." Emma joined her. "You know what today is," Sarah thought. "Tuesday. It's the anniversary. 2 years since the slap." Sarah laughed, a sound that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. "The slap that changed everything." "The slap heard around the world," Emma corrected. "Though I prefer to think of it as the day our family truly found each other." William toddled over, clutching a picture book. "Story, Mama." Sarah picked him up. "What story would you like?" "Dragon story. The one where the princess saves herself from the dragon." William nodded enthusiastically. As Sarah read to her son, surrounded by her chosen family in the foundation, built on her mother's legacy, she realized something profound she'd won. Not just survived, but actually won. Richard had tried to diminish her. Madison had tried to destroy her, and society had tried to silence her. But she'd emerged stronger than all of them. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman in Australia. "Your story gave me courage to leave, starting my new life today." Then another from Texas. "The foundation's resources saved me. 1 year free now." And another from Japan. "Opened our own Helen Parker Foundation branch. 20 women safe so far." Sarah smiled through tears. Her mother's ripples had become waves, crossing oceans, saving lives. Mama crying. William asked, concerned. Happy tears, baby. Mama's crying, happy tears. Judge Patterson took a photo of them all, Sarah with William, Emma beside them, him standing proud behind his daughters. It would later become the Foundation's official photo, representing the family that trauma had broken, but love had rebuilt. That night, after William was asleep, Sarah stood on the balcony of her new apartment, bought with her own money from her speaking engagements and book deal. The city sparkled below, full of stories, struggles, and survivors. Emma joined her with 2 cups of tea. Proud of you, she said simply. For what? For becoming who you are, for not letting them win, for turning pain into purpose. I had help. You, Dad, Rebecca, Dr. Holbrook, Mom from beyond. But you did the work. You chose to fight back, to heal, to help others. They stood in comfortable silence. Sisters who'd found each other through tragedy, but built something beautiful from it. Sarah's phone rang. It was Patricia Chen, the journalist who'd interviewed her. Sarah, I have news. The documentary about your story just won an Emmy. And more importantly, domestic violence hotline calls have increased 400% since it aired. You're saving lives. After she hung up, Sarah looked at the stars and thinking of her mother. We did it, Mom, she whispered. We changed the world, just like you always believed we could. A shooting star streaked across the sky, probably just a coincidence. But Sarah chose to see it as a sign. Helen Parker's daughters were carrying on her work, and somewhere, somehow, she knew and was proud. The auditorium was packed with over 1,000 people. Sarah stood backstage, adjusting her notes one final time. At 33, she'd become one of the most recognized advocates for domestic abuse survivors in the country. Nervous, Emma asked, appearing beside her with a grin. Always, but it's good nervous. William's in the front row with Dad. He made you a sign. Sarah peeked out to see her son, now 6, holding a poster that read, My mom is a hero in crayon. Judge Patterson sat beside him, beaming with grandfatherly pride. This wasn't just any speaking engagement. This was the 5th anniversary celebration of the Helen Parker Foundation, which had grown into an international organization with chapters in 15 countries. Ready, the stage manager asked. Sarah nodded, straightening her shoulders. As she walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. She saw familiar faces: Monica, now a successful business owner; Jessica, who'd become a counselor; Mrs. Anderson, still spry at 80; Rebecca, who'd left corporate law to run the foundation's legal department full-time; Dr. Holbrook, who developed their therapy program that was now used worldwide. 5 years ago, Sarah began, I was slapped in a courtroom while 8 months pregnant. That moment of violence, meant to humiliate and control me, instead became my liberation. She told the story they all knew, but never tired of hearing, finding her sister, discovering her father, uncovering her mother's legacy. But this isn't just my story. It's all of ours. Every survivor who chose to leave, every supporter who chose to believe, every advocate who chose to fight. We are a chorus of voices that refuses to be silenced. The audience was captivated as Sarah announced the Foundation's latest achievement: legislation passed in 12 states, increasing penalties for domestic violence and providing better support for survivors. The Helen Parker law was making real change. My mother saved lives in secret. Today, we save them proudly, loudly, unapologetically. We've helped over 5,000 women directly and countless more through our resources and programs. She paused, looking at William, who was watching with the serious attention only a 6-year-old could muster. My son asked me recently why his daddy wasn't around. I told him the truth age appropriately. Of course, that sometimes people make choices that hurt others, and we have to protect ourselves from those people. He thought about it and said, That's okay, Mama. I have Grandpa Judge and Aunt Emma and all the foundation ladies. That's lots of family. The audience laughed warmly. He's right. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who stand by you, fight for you, and refuse to let you fall. This foundation is my family. All of you are my family." As she concluded her speech, the crowd rose to their feet. William broke from Judge Patterson's grip and ran onto the stage, hugging Sarah's legs. She picked him up, and he whispered in her ear. "What did he say?" Someone called out. Sarah laughed. "He wants to know if we can get ice cream after this." The audience roared with laughter. This was life after trauma, normal moments, silly requests, the beautiful ordinary that she'd fought so hard to achieve. Later, at the reception, Sarah mingled with supporters and survivors. A young woman approached hesitantly. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Claire. I just left my husband last week. Your story. It saved me." Sarah took Claire's hands. "You saved yourself. I just showed you it was possible. The foundation is helping me with everything. I don't know how to thank you. Live well. That's the best thanks. Live well and help another woman when you're ready." As Claire walked away, stronger already, Sarah felt the familiar warmth of purpose. This was her life's work now, not just surviving, but helping others thrive. Emma appeared with champagne. Madison's lawyer contacted the foundation. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Oh, she wants to donate her entire trust fund to us. Says it's blood money and we can do good with it." Sarah considered this. Madison had been released to a halfway house after her psychiatric treatment, a broken shadow of her former self. "Accept it," Sarah decided. "That money can help a lot of women. Maybe it's her way of making amends. You've really forgiven her?" "I've released her. Forgiveness is different, but holding on to anger only hurts me, not her." Judge Patterson joined them with William on his shoulders. "The mayor wants to give you a key to the city," Sarah laughed. "I don't need keys. I need funding for 3 more safe houses." "Already handled," a familiar voice said. Rebecca approached with a check. "Anonymous donor, $20 million. Sarah's jaw dropped. "Who?" "They want to remain anonymous, but they said your mother helped them once. Long ago. They're paying it forward." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes. Even now, Helen Parker's kindness was returning multiplied. As the evening ended, Sarah stood outside the venue with her family. William was asleep in Judge Patterson's arms, exhausted from his exciting day. "Look," Emma said, pointing to the building across the street. A massive billboard had been erected, the Helen Parker Foundation breaking the silence, building the future. Below it was a photo of Helen, young and smiling, holding baby Sarah. "When did you do this?" Sarah asked her father. "Today, I wanted to surprise you. Your mother should be remembered." Sarah stared at her mother's face, larger than life, watching over the city where she'd quietly saved so many. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. A hand slipped into hers, Emma's. Another rested on her shoulder, her father's. William stirred but didn't wake, safe in his grandfather's arms. This was her family, broken and rebuilt, found and chosen, stronger for having been tested. The millionaire ex-husband who tried to destroy her was gone. The narcissistic abuse that had nearly broken her was a distant memory. The financial independence she'd fought for was secured. But more than that, she'd found her purpose, her voice, her power. She'd transformed from victim to survivor, to warrior to healer. As they walked together toward their cars, Sarah felt her mother's presence one last time, a warm breeze on a still night, a whisper of approval, a blessing for the road ahead. The Helen Parker Foundation would continue growing. More women would be saved. William would grow up knowing that strength meant protecting others, not controlling them. The cycle of abuse that had claimed so many would be broken, one survivor at a time. Sarah Mitchell had been slapped in a courtroom while pregnant, and it had changed everything. But not in the way her abusers had intended. Instead of breaking her, it had revealed her unbreakable core. Instead of silencing her, it had given her a voice that echoed across the world. As she drove home, William sleeping in his car seat. Sarah thought about the young woman she'd been scared, isolated, convinced she was worthless. If she could tell that woman one thing, it would be this: you are stronger than you know. And your story isn't ending, it's just beginning. The city lights blurred past, each one possibly representing a woman who needed help, who would find it because Sarah had refused to stay silent. Her mother had planted seeds in secret. Sarah was tending a garden in full sun, and somewhere, in a small apartment or a big house, in a city or a suburb, a woman was reading Sarah's story and thinking, if she can do it, so can I. That was the real victory. Not the money from the divorce, not the justice of Richard's imprisonment, not even the personal healing, though all of those mattered. The real victory was the ripple effect. The countless lives changed because one woman had stood up and said, "No more." Sarah pulled into her driveway, her phone already buzzing with messages from women needing help, reporters wanting statements, partners offering support. Tomorrow would be busy. There would be more battles to fight, more women to save, more systems to change. But tonight, she would tuck William into bed, call Emma to say goodnight, text her father a heart emoji that would make him smile. She would stand on her balcony and look at the stars. Knowing her mother was proud, she would go to sleep in a bed she'd bought in a home she'd earned, free from fear, full of purpose. She was Sarah Mitchell, survivor, advocate, mother, daughter, sister. She had been broken and rebuilt herself. She had been silenced and found her voice. She had been alone and built a family. And this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning.